Sorry I'm late, I had to finish a few things. This has been a lot of work. I'm sure that you are all by now familiar with the Bambulab A1, so let's get into it. The Bambulab A1 is the latest addition to the Bambulab family of 3D printers. Bambu have in fact specifically unveiled it as the A1 Mini's big brother, and for a good reason. It shares a lot of characteristics with the A1 Mini. I don't have one here, but it's been reviewed ad nauseum, so there's plenty of info out there if you want to find it. What we have on the A1 is the same extruder from the Mini. This looks a lot smaller when it's mounted to an X1 and P1 series bed because, by the way, that's what this machine has. It has a 256 by 256 build plate, and even better, the bed is actually fully interchangeable with the X and P series, which is cool if you happen to be running multiple machines, and even more useful if you happen to have a small print farm. The remainder of the design language is shared with the A1 series, and the difference in aesthetic between the A series printers and the X and P series is surprisingly stark. In the studio here, the muted greys of the X1C sit right next to the 1970s sci-fi whites of the A1. I can't decide if the aesthetic is more Dentist's Chair or 2001 Space Odyssey. I guess it's a bit of both. Moving on to the motion system, the X-axis on the A1 is a linear rail. Quite a long one at that. I guess the extra travel is for the purge at one end and cutting the filament on the other. On the Y-axis, it's not immediately obvious what kind of rails the bed runs on. You have to remove the sliding part from the back of the printer to expose a void underneath. I'm somewhat concerned that bits of filament will drop under here, but I guess if they do, you just have to go in and fish them out. The design is sort of curved upwards a bit on the edges where the slots are to presumably stop that. And I did test throwing things in, and the raised edge does seem to work, but you do need to keep an eye on it nonetheless, because if anything does fall in there, it could jam the mechanism and you start getting layer shifts. Underneath here is the answer to the motion system question. If you can see it, these are concave metal wheels running on round rails. This is similar to the mechanism seen in the FL Sun V400, and I think Tronxy and the Neptune 4 Pro, not the Neptune 4, the Pro, they use this too. They're generally considered reliable and accurate, but bear in mind that they are a kind of wheel, and those of you who get triggered by wheels, you know who you are. Now is your time to head to the comments section and be triggered. You'll want to keep this mechanism very clean and well lubricated, as the contact surface with this kind of wheel and rail system, it's really important that nothing gets in here, not even grit, because it will cause problems. There's also two Z-screws, and it would appear that they may be driven through one motor and belts internally. It's hard to tell that from the outside, but that seems to be the case, and this would be consistent with Bambu's other models, which drive all the screws off one motor using belts. Both Z-screws are encapsulated inside the folded aluminium frame. You can see them, but it's good to have them encapsulated in there because it means you won't keep brushing against it and getting grease on your arm, which is something that I suffer from a lot with Bedslingers. Unfortunately, no such luck with the linear rail on the X-axis, which is exposed. The AMS used on the A1, because this is a multicolour capable printer just like every other Bambu before it, this is the same optional AMS Lite that we saw released with the A1 Mini. It's a simpler version of the original Bambu AMS because it has no enclosure, but not only that, it also is simpler electronically too, because the way the extruder, or rather the hub attached to it, is designed. The AMS doesn't need to be able to retract that much filament backwards onto the spool when changing colours, and you'll see why in a moment, so there is no motor on the physical spool. The only motors on this unit are in these cylindrical shaped pushy bits, and they have just enough power to push the filament up through the tube into the machine where it gets picked up by the extruder. So they can reverse the filament, I think, but of course if the reel can't reverse to wind it back, it would just come out and tangle around the reel. Bambu came up with a solution for that. There is a spring inside these holders that allows a small amount of return, and that's all you need. This is some clever engineering, you have to admit. If you're familiar with previous Bambu models, then you will know that there was a filament buffer on the rear of the Core XY printers. If you watch those machines carefully, if you turn them around and have a look at how they work, you will see that they push filament from the AMS in discrete jumps rather than constantly. And this is because of the filament buffer. It's a tube on a spring and it can telescope out to make the filament path longer or retract inwards to make it shorter, only maybe by a total of about 1.5 inches, but that is enough to mean that the motors in the AMS do not have to work constantly, they only have to fire every 1.5 inches, and that's enough to mean that you also don't have to worry about retraction. In the A1 printers though, this buffer has been moved. It's now right on top of the extruder, and you can see it working here in slow-mo. Looking at the tool head itself, the whole thing is very small, as I already said. The buffer on the top doesn't appear to be user removable, or not intended to be. So this means that if you want to use the machine in single player mode, with the reel on the top of the machine on the holder that is provided, you can do this, but you have to remove all the tubes and add the provided clamping stand, and then put the PTFE tube on that and into one of the holes. The front of the tool head comes off, it is just clipped on with the plastic moulding. Inside we have a nozzle and some instructions on how to change it. This is particularly simple. All you do is you unclip the front clip from the right hand side and then the nozzle just comes out. This is a vast improvement over the nozzle change procedure on the X1, which I did recently make a video on, and I'll try to remember to link that in the description. With the nozzle out, you can see what I think is a huge plate that acts as a heating plate for the nozzle. This is an interesting way of doing it. I have never seen this method used before. I think the part at the bottom you can see here is probably the thermistor. I've actually checked what happens if the nozzle is badly fitted or not fitted, or even pulled out mid-way while it's heating, or while it's already heated, and the printer detects all of these shenanigans pretty quickly within maybe 5 seconds, and it shuts down completely, so I think Bambu have really nailed the thermal protection in this model. As far as the rest of the extruder, well, it's in there somewhere. I can see a Nemo 14, I think it is, motor back there. It's quite small, and I can see into the extruder. You can open the side of the extruder and look in there. And if you take these 2 screws off at the front, you can pull this small piece out, which will presumably get you where you need to be for any heat creep based blockages. So changing topic completely, with the printer you get this pack of filament swatchers, which is really cool. This is the same as you got with the A1 Mini. And you get this box that contains a bunch of bearings and screws, which are not in this box anymore because they're now contained in this model. Because this is a kit that's provided for you to print and assemble, and you can print everything for this, apart from the parts that they provide you, on the A1. You may recall that the A1 Mini came with a random kit that was generally much simpler to assemble. This machine, I believe, comes at the moment with either this kit for the jet engine or a tourbillon model. At the time we were sent them for review, only the jet engine was available, so I'm pretty sure every reviewer got the jet engine. I actually found it fairly easy to build. The hardest part was getting the supports off and tidying up, which was kind of tedious to the point that I haven't actually yet finished doing it. I will get round to it, but as you can see, the model is built, and it works fine. I was sent this pack of Hue Forge filament. I think Bambu intends to sell these packs. This isn't going to come with the printer when you buy it. It's just something that Bambu have sent us to demonstrate. I haven't heard anything more about it at the moment, but there were 4 packs listed in 4 general colour themes, and we got sent 4 3MFs. I printed the one for the colours they sent me, but I also noticed that I had the colours for the yellow one as well, so I printed that out as well. To wrap up, there is one last point before I go into what I thought of the A1. Bambu have sent over some files, and these aren't necessarily final, I'm told. In fact, I'm sure that mine aren't final because they're missing a piece on the back. These make a stand for the AMS to go on top of the printer, which, honestly, I find quite scary. But I'm sure that the Bambu engineers know what they're doing. So, on to my findings. I printed a lot on this printer, and even though I had it for quite a while before this review, I think it was about a month, I still didn't get it done in time for release. Or at least I don't think I have, looking at how close it is now. As always, I've done my report, and I'll upload that to the website as soon as I can if you want to see the detailed results. In terms of reliability, the A1 is remarkably reliable in fact, and I don't recall a lot of failures at all. The finished parts are neat, and the accuracy is clearly excellent in order to be able to print the jet engine, but there is more than that, because in the next video I'll be showing it printing some small things like this. One thing to note is that I've been predominantly testing the printer in serial colour mode, meaning one colour at a time with perhaps changes in between or changes on layers, but like in HueForge, but that is how I like to use these printers, as I'm not a huge fan of the amount of waste that you get if you do massively multicoloured models. I just invented that. But I have been operating through the AMS Lite and on single player mode, probably in equal proportions. With regards to the reliability of the AMS Lite, as long as you have the tubes guided correctly as per the manual, to avoid friction or tight corners, everything seems to work correctly every time. The reason I say this is because if you don't, especially with higher friction filaments like this charcoal black that was used in the HueForge print, they might struggle to push all the way to the nozzle because the motor isn't powerful enough to overcome the friction if you have a very tight corner. And I've had this happen once here. This is entirely solvable by making sure that you route the cables correctly. So this makes the printer, well, I could go on about this for probably quite some time, but I think the short version is that, in my opinion, with the simpler kinematics of a Bedslinger and the slightly more normal feeling speeds and the refinements to the AMS Lite, this could and probably is going to be a more reliable machine than the previous Bambu offerings, and we'll see, because that's something we can only find out over time. So, overall, this machine at the price which is on screen now is kind of a no-brainer if you were already looking at getting into the Bambu ecosystem, and you might have been looking at a printer like the Mini but you wanted a larger bed, and you might have been looking at the P1S but you didn't want to spend that much and you weren't that bothered about the enclosure. You might even have a P1S or an X1 already and you might want another Bambu, and that's a really good option to increase your printing capacity. It feels like this printer sits kind of squarely between the low budget price of the A1 Mini and the sort of medium price of the P1S. So in terms of product offering, I'm not really sure where Bambu are going to go next. All I can think is, well, we might see a larger Bedslinger in 2024, but maybe we'll leave that speculation for the upcoming video where I'm going to be making that speculation. So that's it for this video. Remember to click below if you're interested in the machine. If you follow the links down in the description, it will help support the channel if you use them because they are affiliate links. Also, as I've already said at least 3 times, make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss the upcoming episode where this printer will be used for some interesting miniature things alongside a few other printers. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.